what we realize is we're fixing to take some steps. We're fixing to plant some other churches.
Yep.
And a lot of what we're about to do and embark upon is born out of years of conversation and years of little things that we're hashing out, that maybe all of those decisions, the why behind those decisions, the heart behind those decisions, didn't actually make it to everyone in our church. And at the end of the day, like, it has to be all of us. We owe it to the church to do the best job that we can to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and just almost like in Renew Life Church fashion, the only way we need to do it was just have this conversation, let you hear all the stuff, so that when you hear an announcement in 2 months or 3 months or 2 days, whatever, you're not like, what in the world is going on? It's like, oh, that I know exactly what, that makes perfect sense now. All right, thanks for joining us on, I don't really know what this is, but it is our attempt to really bring you guys as a church family into a discussion that we've been having for years, really. And I think sometimes you can find yourself in a situation where a lot of conversations have happened behind the scenes. You do the best you can of communicating it publicly to the churches and the campuses and the leadership and the staff and all the things. But you look up one day and you're like, man, a lot of things are happening around here. We just want to do a good job of communicating what those things are, why we're doing some of the things that we're doing, in an effort to say, hey, we're all doing this together. We want you to be a part of the team.
Right.
We want you to know what's going on around here. We want you to believe in what's going on around here. And so today is going to be a little bit about just the kind of the history of the church over the last several years, and kind of what's led us to a place where we feel like a lot's changed in our organization, and really give some clarity to some of the moving parts maybe you've seen and are like, okay, well, why are they doing this, and what's going on over here?
I wonder what's happening.
I wonder what's happening.
Yeah.
And so that's what this is all about. And I'll just be really honest with you. We want this to be extremely raw, extremely real. We want to have a conversation, invite you into conversations we've been having for years now,
Yeah.
let you see what relationships supposed to look like, at least to the best of our ability.
Right.
Not just leadership, but genuine relationship.
Yeah.
We've got Cody with us, got Keith with us. Obviously, you guys would know them. And yeah, a lot's happened, and we just kind of want to bring you in on that and and try to answer as many questions as we can, in hopes that as a church family, and in case you're watching this and you're not a part of our church family, maybe you even just see and hear some things that, man, I've never heard that before. I've never seen that before. And if anything that we say or we're doing is helpful to you and your organization or your church, great. But nonetheless, we're leading this the best we know how, with an amazing church family. Our churches, we've got one campus, obviously, first one there in Midland, also in Lubbock, and we've got more to come. And that's a lot about what we're going to talk about. Is that. And so I think I just want to begin with, I think the first decade of our church, Renew Life Church, was in a lot of ways inspired by what I would say just prophecy that we felt like prophetically the Lord had told Leanne and I that there was an inheritance for us in Midland. We had Leanne's family had planted a church here years ago. They tragically died in a plane crash. And when that happened, my parents took over the church, and Leanne and I were kind of doing our own thing, going to college, pursuing different things. And when a lot of this was going on, and Midland was a pain point for us. That was a place and a place we said we never wanted to go back. And Midland did not represent anything good to us. And so, but when the Lord began to speak to us about coming back to Midland, it was really about capturing a spiritual inheritance and recovering some things that her mom and dad had so faithfully sown. And then my mom and dad had come alongside them and faithfully stewarded. And I think I would just say that the first 10 years of the church, there was no plan for campuses there was none of that.
Yeah.
We felt like we were supposed to start a church. We had leaders in our lives say, hey, this is what we think you're supposed to do. We really wasn't even our idea.
Yeah.
But we had, leaders in our church say, hey, I think this is what's next for you. We had prophetic words that said, hey, there's an inheritance there. So it was really just an act of obedience, really.
And you guys were a part of a church already.
Yeah.
You were up in Amarillo
Yeah.
in ministry. How long y'all been in ministry up to that point?
I think that we've been there at that particular church for 7 years. We'd been in ministry.
Yeah.
And when we first came to Midland, it was as a campus pastor for that organization.
Yeah.
We were just doing whatever the next right thing was. And
filling in a gap.
Yeah, filling in the gap. And in the middle of all that's when it was like, hey, we think you need to do your own thing. Renew Life Church was born. And so that, I think, thus began the journey of kind of recovering some of that spiritual inheritance. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but the very first check that was ever written to Renew Life Church was literally $100,000. Some couple comes up to us, says, we feel like we're supposed to help with you with this. They write us a check for $100,000, and it was the bass player, the original bass player for Leanne's dad's church.
Wow.
So
Super
I mean, so the inheritance started
That's
immediately.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so, and then of course I could tell so many stories about how God brought people back from our past, so to speak, to really do this. And so we were doing it. And God was faithful. The church began to grow. It was pretty incredible. None of us saw it coming, to be honest with you. And so we do this, and then it's 7-8 years into this thing. Really more like 6-7 years into this thing, this weird feeling starts coming on. Like, is there more? Is there supposed to be more to this? Like, we're getting ready to build this big mega building that's going to hold all the growth that's already had happened. We had almost 2,000 people that would call Renew Life Church their home church, or at least occasionally visit. And so there was some size to it. And so we're getting ready to build this mega building. And of course the Lord shut it down. That particular building, because I think he knew what was coming, and but he also
has a tendency to know better.
Yeah, he has a tendency to know things, and so just this strange feeling is, and more of a thought. Just so you kind of know, when someone says, "I heard the Lord," it's like, well, it just kind of started as like this thought, like, are we supposed to do this again? Are there other churches? It just was a thought. And slowly but surely we began to act on these things and take some steps of faith. I remember I was at the Cork and Pig between Midland and Odessa, and Leanne and I had been just having these random weird thoughts about us moving to Lubbock and just some weird stuff we thought. And that was where we took our first step of faith. Got on Zillow right there in the restaurant on a Friday afternoon. Looked up some houses and thought, well, maybe if we find the house and the Lord confirms it through a house, something. And before that day was over, we were in Lubbock looking at a house with a real estate agent who ends up telling us he had been praying for God to move in the city of Lubbock. I mean, it's just the most.
I remember when you called me and told me what you were doing, I was like, what?
What
Why?
are you doing?
Yeah. Why are you in Lubbock?
Yes.
Why are you in Lubbock right now?
Yeah. But isn't that how that's how it happens, right? It's just like that's the life of faith. You're just like a child trying to hear what dad's saying and act in any way that you think might show him trust and faith and belief. And so we do that. And that's really where what I would call kind of the second prophetic season of our church began, where it's no longer I'm just saying yes to what a spiritual father has told me he thinks is on my life. It's not just saying yes to even a prophetic mandate of go recovering and a spiritual inheritance left by Leanne's family and my family. It was almost like the first time when it's like the Lord's telling me to do something and me to start something. And I can tell you, I felt it. I felt the weight of that. And it's like, oh my God, this is a completely different feeling.
Yeah.
And so it was in that time when I do believe that where we're at today and what we're kind of embarking upon today and as we move forward kind of started, which was, okay, we start making these little baby steps to Lubbock. We start letting you guys know, hey, like, you had just moved to Midland.
Yeah, we were right in the middle of that whole thing.
Yeah.
So we had just come to Midland. We had kind of jumped onto a team where it's like, man, like we got a lot of great things in place. You're senior leading. I'm kind of next in line. Cody's adult ministries leader and pastor. We're all in the same building.
Yep.
Like we can share the platform. Quite honestly, it was getting in some ways easy,
Yep.
like not one guy has to carry everything. It's like, this is sweet. We're building a building. We're about to be able to go into our own thing. And it's like, right when everything was getting real sweet, the Lord like started talking to you and Leanne about, hey, there might be more to this thing.
Yeah.
And so, me and Natalie were right in the middle of that thing, got here in 2018. And then we started having conversations and even had gotten some prophetic words of like, we're supposed to go with you to Lubbock. and we're supposed to go start this journey kind of together and help you guys do that. And so we spent a grand total of 2 years in Midland, Texas, and then it was like off to
the next
a whole
thing.
new thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, and then
It's wild.
we take that step, but then you take a step and you realize, oh man, there's a domino effect. Everybody's life's changing. The Lord speaks to me, but all of a sudden now Keith has to move his family.
Right.
And then the Lord speaks to us to go. And all of a sudden Cody's like, where are you guys going? What am I supposed to do? You know,
this was a good thing. Why are you messing this up?
And then you're kind of thrust into the middle of a situation I don't think you planned for.
No, and I think that, just even when I said a while ago, like the Lord knows and he has this ability to know. Like I was just had the thought, like I went through that really challenging season of like 2016 to 2017 mid year. And had that not happened, I don't think that I would have been able to step into the position that I was asked to step into when you guys moved. And so, my wife and I, we went into like, I remember just going back to the journals and just writing things like, Lord, I have no idea why you're doing this or what you're doing, but are you sure that you have the right person?
Yeah.
And just having to constantly remind myself, because it's just so much like the Lord to put you in situations where you're like, I have no business being here.
Yeah.
And so like, Lord, but I just trust that you'll sustain it. And so I think it was just it felt like a really wild ride, and still probably does in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I think that we're seeing the fruits of the obedience, and it's been incredible. But yeah, it was a very interesting, is probably a really light word to use.
And just to fill in the gaps, just in case you're a bit new to the story, when we felt the Lord was asking us to go to Lubbock, it was to start the word he gave us, a hub campus, a central campus. And he gave us 7 total cities. And even how that happened was so bizarre. I had a hunch that there were several. I kind of thought I knew where some might be, and then had a crazy lunch with a guy where I was kind of explaining to him kind of what I thought. And he's like, dude, this is crazy. It sounds just like the region that I'm over. I'm a district manager for a region. And as he was saying this, I felt like the Lord like literally grabbed me and was like, listen to this. Like I knew I was fixing to get, revelation. And he just lists off all these cities, Lubbock, Amarillo, Wichita Falls, Abilene, Midland, Odessa, and then Roswell. And I'd had this hunch that there might be one random church in eastern New Mexico, and then he names Roswell, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's it. And of course, there was prophetic, dreams with all this as well. Leanne's got this dream where the Lord takes her to this. It's almost like a bingo kind of a churner thing. I don't know what that thing's called.
With all the balls inside of it.
In it. And he's like, she's in this line, it comes her turn. She pulls out this number and shows it to the Lord, and he takes her to the edge of this hill, and she's this big ring of fire around this region. And so we were getting all this direction from the Lord. And then of course, submitting this to our elders and leaders as well. It's like, we're getting all this direction. Like, hey, it's not just a church. It's a region, it's an influence, it's potentially multiple churches. And so when we go, I'd been the lead pastor here in Midland. You were the associate pastor there. You were the adult ministries director. The way it kind of all worked is I did the majority of the preaching. You did a good part from I think the year before we left, you'd preached once.
I looked back and it was like 5 total times. 5? Yeah.
Feels in a year?
In a year.
From 2000, end of 18 to early 2020.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so you only preached 5 times
over that course of period.
So you just went from 5 in 2 years to 52 in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's like, when we go, it's like, okay, Cody, you're the new campus pastor.
Yeah.
And at the time we were like, we don't feel like streaming's the thing. That wasn't what we felt was our thing at the time. And
for those of you who were on that journey with us, remember that we went to in order to pull Lubbock and Midland at the same time.
We were talking about that the other day.
We moved Midland campus to night services.
Yeah.
So we had a whole team up in Lubbock hitting that 9 and 11 or just at 10 o'clock, getting in the car, driving our whole families down a lot of times, and being a part of the 2 services here in Midland. And I mean, I thought the Midland church was just ballers in that. They were a game.
Oh, well,
they just first of all, they sowed financially into the plan of the campus. So let's just put that out there, how amazing that was.
Yeah.
And then just to be willing to kind of support what the second half of what the Lord was showing you in the end.
Yeah.
It's like everybody, whether they knew all the details or not, I think a lot of people felt the Lord on it.
Yeah.
And they're like, heck yes, like let's do this thing.
Yeah.
If it's another campus, let's go.
And in some ways, that's kind of why we're here today, because it's like during that season, we're doing the best we can to keep people up to date with what we feel like God is saying. hey, we feel that's what God's saying. We feel like this is what God's saying, and we're telling them about we're moving to Lubbock, and we're telling them about the 7 cities. And as is the case so often when you're pursuing God and following God as a disciple, it's like you're doing the best with what you think you're hearing.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're not 100% convinced. That's
Mhm.
just not the way it really works.
Mhm.
But it's like,
Sure.
okay, Lord, I think I'm hearing something. I'm going to take a step of faith. I'm going to get out of the boat, metaphorically speaking, and I'm hoping I float when I get out there.
Yeah.
If I start sinking, I'll assume I went the wrong direction. But in
Right.
the meantime, it's like, I need you to ordain my steps, confirm what I think you're saying. And he was doing that in so many ways. But it was still a very fast moving thing. When we were looking for something that we didn't know existed. We
Yeah.
were after something. It's like we said earlier before we started recording. Um, it's like we didn't have this. We had a very clear vision. This is where the Lord has told us to go. No, it's almost like we all are like, there's something out there that's probably bigger and better than any of us even know, and you sense it,
Mhm.
and you go after it, knowing you'll know it when you find it,
Right.
and you'll even know when you're getting closer to it. And I think over the last several years, that's what we've done. It's been this like, okay, we're going to plant churches. Well, what does that look like? What does each campus do? How does each campus feel? What's the leadership structure at each campus look like? If there's a hub campus, does someone oversee all the campuses? Where does their line of authority start and stop? Cody, you're the new campus pastor of Midland. Okay, well, what do I do? What are you going to keep doing? What am I going to do? There's all these things have to be defined.
Right.
And it's all happening in real time over COVID.
During COVID.
During COVID.
Yeah.
And the world's in chaos. We're trying to figure this thing out. And it's like, man, I tell you, I think for a couple of years there, all of us really felt like, and I know the church world at large felt this. It's like, we're just trying to stay afloat.
Mhm.
And so I think we get on the backside of kind of the triage season of COVID. The world starts coming back to normal. We start to get our stuff back together. We start to recover financially, numerically, even just in margin of your soul from everything that had happened, from the move to the change to the building to all the things,
Mhm.
right? And I think we've really spent the last couple of years really starting to hone in. It's like, okay, what is this? How do we do this? If we've got Lubbock now, or we've got Midland and Lubbock now, we start to see leaders emerge. People start to show up on
Yeah.
the scene. It's like, okay, that
And
guy.
that's always been the track. Like
Yeah.
the place doesn't determine our timeline.
Yeah.
The people determine
do.
the
Yeah, that's actually a great point.
determine the
'Cause we're
timeline.
looking for people that are like ready, qualified,
Right.
called, all the things.
Character, all the above.
All the things. And so it's like people start showing up, strategies kind of start coming to us,
Mm.
resources kind of start coming to us, and you find yourself in a situation where it's like, okay, we got to start figuring some of this stuff out. We're getting closer to being ready to plant maybe the next campus.
Well, I'll stop you right there. I think also it'd be good to say this. Like, we weren't just going to Lubbock and starting another campus. We were also starting this side of our ministry that we dubbed the hub.
The hub.
Right? Which was, corporate in some
Corporate office,
ways,
yeah.
the corporate office that's going to help oversee both campuses and what they're going to provide to each campus. What do they
Or- yeah.
actually do?
Well, even that word you use, like, are they overseeing campuses?
Right.
Are they resourcing campuses?
Serving the
Are
campus?
they serving the campus? Is the campus pastor in charge, or is the hub in charge?
And then we were like, I don't know. We had a season where we're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that the Lord has talked about a hub. We can see it being in Lubbock.
Yeah.
We know that there's going to be a Lubbock campus and a Midland campus. So let's just start
Mhm.
and let's just kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
And
sure.
there for a while, I mean, we were kind of all involved
Yeah.
in like
In
there's
everything.
dual roles. There's still dual roles where there's like someone who works at the Lubbock campus, but they're also a part of the hub.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? It means they help both campuses, but they're also half on staff in Lubbock.
Yeah.
And we had to work through that and figure out
Who do I report to?
who yeah, well, okay, well, if that person works for the hub, who do they
Yeah.
report to? And does the person over the hub, do they tell the campus pastor what to do in certain areas, but
Yeah.
it's their campus? And like it started to get muddy in some
Yeah.
ways. And I think the beauty of that, and I think what we're even talking about here is the way we were able to work through all of that
Mhm.
is because we had a relationship.
Yeah, that's true.
the relationship that we had with one another, the understanding that we're all figuring it out, the understanding that, hey, we all took this step of faith together, right? We all kind of came together and we're like, all right, ready, go.
Yeah.
And we started doing that, and it was very, there were some hard parts of that, but it started to work because we were able to have real conversations.
Yeah.
We were able to even say, so do I answer to so and so? Because if so, I don't know if I like that. Do we, do we have to?
Yeah, do we?
Yeah.
Does it have to be like that? And
I think the beauty of it is it just squeezed out so many things that were just slight fractures in the foundation of relationship that you have to have in order to build something that's
that's
going
right.
to stand.
Yeah.
Even all those little nuances of not knowing and having to ask questions and have conversations that took some courage here and there, that squeezed out to get us to a place where we're closer to who we're supposed to be in the Lord as pastors and leaders.
I'm thinking of some of the elders meetings where I'm watching Cody's face and we're making a decision, and I can just see Cody's like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. It's like,
Eject.
Cody, are
Looking
we
for the
good?
eject
Yes, for the eject button.
Yeah,
But
there's been those moments where I'm like, I'm the only no in the room.
yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
the only one who doesn't like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but good.
But I think that's really, and I think that's why we wanted to do this. And that's a little bit of the background, because I think moving forward, what we realize is we're fixing to take some steps. We're fixing to plant some other churches. We're fixing to do some stuff, do some things.
Yep.
And a lot of what we're about to do and embark upon is born out of years of conversation and years of little things that we're hashing out, that maybe all of those decisions, the why behind those decisions, the heart behind those decisions, didn't actually make it to everyone in our church. And at the end of the day, like, it has to be all of us.
Yeah.
Like we all have to be doing this together. One can put 1,000 a flight, two can put 10,000 a flight. It's like we have to do this together. And what we're learning is that we owe it to the church to do the best job that we can to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and just almost like in Renew Life Church fashion, the only way we need to do it was just have this conversation, let you hear all the stuff.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and even some of the ugly. It's like, how did we get here? What were some of the tension points, and what's it going to look like moving forward? So that when you hear an announcement in 2 months or 3 months or 2 days, whatever, when you hear something, you're not like, what in the world is going on? It's like, oh, that I know exactly what that makes perfect sense now.
Yeah.
Now that I've gotten a little bit of the backstory, I think, I don't know. Maybe a year ago is, I think, when we started feeling some of these birthing pains. Keith, I would say you and I. Well, obviously you had birthing pains, if you will, when it's like we leave and all of a sudden you're left at a campus and you're left to navigate a moving target where I'm trying to decide as a leader, like, we have such a belief system of, every individual believer carrying unique sets of gifts, even in the ministry gifts in the Ephesians 4, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. Such value in all of those, as having a gift and a talent and ability to equip the saints for the work of the ministry will never become like Jesus and look like the ministry of Jesus if it's just one man. We've seen that doesn't work.
Right.
And so I understand mentally that, hey, I see this in scripture. This can't be, I might have be the leader and maybe the forerunner in some ways, but if I'm wise, I'll build it around people, not me. And so as you start to kind of do that, you start empowering other people, you start finding out that it's like, I know in my brain I'm supposed to empower. Well, then you empower, and then something doesn't go the way you want it to go, and you're like, I'm taking that power back. I did not like that.
Give me that.
Give me that back. And so then it's like, you pull back, and then it leaves you in a situation where, like,
What am I supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do? Or what did I do?
What did I do?
What did I do wrong there? I was just trying to do what you asked me to do. And it's that, like you said earlier, it's that relationship that keeps us going, hey, you mad, bro? You're like, well, I kind of am mad.
Yeah.
And working through some of those growing pains of, like, okay, where does the role of a quote unquote senior leader start and stop? And I would say a framework for everything that we're going to talk about moving forward is that what we've, I think, concluded as a team is the model of the family is the most beautiful picture of what the church is supposed to look like.
Yeah, that's it. Right there.
Yeah, the church is the army of the Lord. Yeah, the church is the body of Christ. But I think the purest one is the church is the family of God. and that the family model and things that we learn about and see in family, they really are the things that if we will look at this thing and say, okay, we don't have an organization and we're going to make relationships and everything we do fit inside what we already know the organization's supposed to look like. But what if the organization is supposed to stay flexible, pliable, bendable, moldable, changeable, so that there's family values and kingdom values, and the kingdom and the family are superior to the quote unquote organization?
That's it. I think that's when
Mhm.
all of this really starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Is in with the backdrop in the foundation of spiritual family.
Mhm.
The backdrop is relationship.
Yeah.
When as we move on and talk about what's going on, like organizationally, it starts to get complicated.
Mm.
Relationally,
Yeah.
it's not.
It's not that complicated.
Inside of the framework of a family,
Yeah.
it really starts to make sense. Even as we explain, we're going to use family terms and like talk
Yeah.
through like we have been about these relationships. It's like, man, if I can get my, that's what really helped me
Mm.
when I was when and in the last year when everything's been going down and trying to figure out what's next for us and how's Lubbock going to be and all this is like it only made sense in the context of
Yeah,
relationship.
sure.
And it kind of got rid of all the fluff and all the bull and it's like,
Mhm.
oh man, well like yeah, we're going to Amarillo and we're going to go plant a church and well, why are we doing that? Well, because the Lord is kind of saying so. And what is that going to look like? I don't know, but you're for me and
Mhm.
I'm for Renew Life and I want to stay connected and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that actually starts to make absolute
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
You know?
But it makes sense eventually. But I think what's important for people to know is as we've been on this journey, there have been some points where it's like, I'm not liking you right now, and I don't
Mhm.
think you're liking me.
Mhm.
What is this? What is this rub? I I don't like the way something's going down, but it's not because anybody did anything wrong. I think they just did something different than I would have done it. And so as a leader, and I've seen people do this, the easiest thing to do is keep your hands on the steering wheel and stay in control.
Yeah.
It's easier to stay in control. But I've also learned that fear tries to stay in control, and so does pride.
Hmm.
Pride and fear both want to stay in control
Mhm.
because if I trusted the Lord, I'm not. If I genuinely trust Him, I don't mind taking my hand off the wheel. I also don't mind taking my hand off the wheel if I think somebody else might know something better than I do or more than I do,
Right.
and someone else could also drive a car just as good as I can drive a car.
Yeah.
So you can see right there where if we're going to do this the right way, there has to be faith and there has to be humility.
Mhm.
And so it's
So
real similar in the model we're using right now as we kind of have been navigating some of this. Some of these next steps is it's that family model where you're raising kids, kids are getting older, and transitions are happening within the home. And I'll kind of introduce this idea that the Lord's been really talking to me about. In Scripture, there's only two commandments directed towards kids: obey your parents in the Lord and honor your father and mother. What you see is there's a big difference, though, in obedience and honor. And they actually, in my opinion, it's demonstrating or indicating there are two different seasons in the life of a child. There's the early stages of obedience where I obey my parents. For there to be obedience, there has to be a command or an instruction. So your only job to be successful as a child is to hear the command, do the command.
mhm.
Sure.
And that's why we teach that in our parenting stuff. It's like, hey, this is where it all starts. A child with a yielded, humble, submitted heart to their authority.
Mhm.
Well, what we learn though is, and if you've got teenagers, you're there. It's like they start to realize, well, I know some stuff too. You know some stuff, but now I think I know some stuff, and I'm quite certain the stuff I'm learning is more than what you know. And it's that weird transition between like, okay, they're becoming who God's called them to become. And if you're a good parent, and it's also where the most challenge, I think, now that I've got one in college, I would say the most challenging season for us is navigating the change of relationship with my child from an obedient child to an honoring child. How do
Yeah.
I navigate? Because for me to navigate that is me also saying, I'm not going to give instructions anymore.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to control my home, control my environment with my children when I'm giving instructions. When I'm trying to give wisdom in hopes that they honor what I'm saying, I lose control because they are now get to choose.
Yeah. Do I follow that instruction or do I not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because honor, the one of the best definitions of honor is give weight to.
Yep.
Sure.
So if they're honoring me, they're going to give weight to what I'm saying. But you can give weight to what I'm saying and still decide, yeah, I've got this other thing going on inside of me, this nagging conviction that although I hear what you're saying, I respect you, I love you, you're smart, you're amazing,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
And the first time it's like as a leader, it's like the first time you try to start empowering leaders and you say, that's your area. And then they do something and you're like,
I'll never forget this.
I don't like what they
The
just did.
very first time that you guys were both in Lubbock, I was in Midland. It was the first time that I felt like the Lord. We obviously have the culture of like, if the Lord starts moving in a direction, like, don't ignore what He's telling you to do. It was the first time that I felt like we were supposed to not move into a message, but we were supposed to stay in like a ministry worship moment. And it was beautiful. It was incredible. But it was the first time that I had made that decision without being able to go on the front row to either one of you and say, this is what I feel like the Lord's saying to do.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
And it was like, I had been empowered to do it,
Yeah.
but so I went for it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, did I make the wrong decision?
Yeah.
I was empowered, but then it was like, what does Braden think?
Yeah.
And so then I didn't hear from you for a couple of days. We had a meeting together.
I forgot.
You remember this?
I forgot.
We had a
about
meeting
this.
together. He didn't bring it up, and I was like, "Oh, he is so ticked." And so I called him. One day. We had been in a whole meeting, like an elders meeting or something, and I called him when I got back to Midland. I was like, "Hey, I just have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Are we good?"
Yeah.
Because I did this thing.
Did you know what I did?
And it was awesome, but you haven't said that it was awesome or that you heard that it was awesome. So are we okay?
And I just remember being so shocked. I was like, what do you mean, are we good? Why would we not be
What
good?
happened?
I was not in that frame of mind, but I'd also not just taken the risk that he took.
Right.
Right. And so as a son, if you will,
Yeah.
it was like going for it, but still wanting that we all have this in some degree, still wanting to know,
Sure.
like, did I do the right thing?
Yeah, sure.
And do you approve of what I did? And
Well, there's been other times too where it's been like, you hear, hey, the Midland campus or because for a while I didn't have a role really in either one of the campuses. I was in kind of the hub world, kind of overseeing building for the future, building infrastructure, and I had fully empowered you guys. Keith, I need you to take care of Lubbock. Cody, you take care of Midland. We had obviously we were in conversation about a lot of it, but I was kind of in another world, so to speak. And then it's like then you hear, hey, Keith decided that the Lubbock campus is going to do da 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 da, and it's like, huh? and you start to realize your brain knew that the right thing is to empower, but then the first time someone doesn't do it the way you would have done it, you find out, how much do you believe this? Because Scripture says we all know in part and we prophesy in part. And I've shared this with you guys. One of the biggest challenges for me has been I still have a call of God on my life.
Right.
You got a call of God on your life. You got a call of God on your life. I got a call of God on my life. I want to hear well done. Like that, as a redemptive gift prophet, that's the thing I live to hear more than anything is you did it right.
Yeah.
I find my faith in God through the principles of God more than I even do the person of God. And I want to know that my God said you did it right. That just makes my spirit man tick. And so like at the end of the day, did I steward this right? Well, and sometimes the way I steward it right is to empower you and let you do something I don't even get. I don't even see, because we all know in part and we prophesy in part. So the right thing to do is to do whatever you guys say and whatever you're thinking is right for Lubbock and whatever you think is right for Midland, or maybe the elders have decided is right for the organization.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's like, but the Lord did ask me to lead this thing. And so when do I say, hang on, guys, I don't have a good feeling about this. Like I feel like if we go this route, I know I hear you, Cody. I honor you. I give weight to what you're saying. Keith, I give weight to what you're saying too. But it's like, but I got this conviction that I'm going to have to answer for. Did I do my part right?
Yeah.
And so when you're in that place where you're trying to navigate two truths in a way, you'll give power and you'll take it away. And then you need them to give grace to you because you're just trying to get it right. You were just trying to get it right. You were just trying to get it right. And what it can sometimes do is I use this example sometimes. It's like a pendulum. We'll swing one day, I went too far, but then it's got to come back. But the goal is that eventually over time, that pendulum's not perfectly still. We're never going to just hit dead center all the time. But I would like for the hover,
find a rhythm.
Yeah, our boundaries to be more defined and more closer to. We kind of
swing so far.
Yeah, they're not swinging so. Because I think that's what happens when you start living by faith. You take these big risks, which if you've been around here for very long, we'll send it. We ain't scared to send it.
Yeah.
But what we're hoping is that over time you send it by faith, because the Bible doesn't tell us that the just shall live by wisdom. The Bible says the just shall live by faith.
That's right.
So we're not going to stop living by faith.
Mhm.
However, over time, as we keep adding wisdom and understanding to our repertoire, if you will,
Mhm.
the even the steps of faith are surrounded by so much wisdom. There's less opportunity for offense. There's less opportunity for division, people getting hurt,
Yeah.
people getting lost along the way. Because the reality of it is, as leaders, we just have to acknowledge that sometimes, as we've been doing all the things we're talking about us doing, people get caught in the crosshairs or
Yeah.
the crossfire.
Yeah.
They get hurt, they get shot because we're trying to do the best we can. Man, we just didn't have the wisdom. And as 40-ish-year-old guys, we just got the wisdom we got.
Yeah.
You're not talking about 3 seasoned veterans that, man, we've been doing this our whole life. It's like,
Planted a bunch of churches.
Oh,
We
yeah.
know how this
No,
goes.
no.
We know how a hub and
Our
church
prayers
is
normally like, Lord, do what you can with what you got.
Yeah, exactly. Do what you can with what you got.
Yeah.
And so, so in this, it's like, even like Keith, let's go. I want to talk about this for just a second.
Yeah.
You know, I live in Lubbock. I'm over the hub, but now the church that I bring my family to is a church that's led by Keith. Keith's doing what Keith's supposed to be doing, which is taking ownership of the campus, and he's being Keith.
Yeah.
So he's just Keithing all over the campus.
Yep.
So it looks like Keith, smells like Keith,
Mhm.
acts like Keith. And so, and then all of a sudden it's like, you start to realize, I'm sending my kids to this church. The only church that they've ever been a part of is one that I've been leading, and it looks like Braden.
Yeah.
And it smells like Braden, and it acts like, it's
Yeah.
it's this way. Well, this don't look like what I'm used to. This don't look like how I do my family. And it's like, you find all of a sudden there's this friction.
Yeah.
And for a while there wasn't, but then until there was.
Yeah. Yeah. For most of it, there wasn't.
Yeah,
You know, and,
most of it.
and then really in the last year and a half, there has been that friction. And I'll never forget, we were on a ski trip together, and we were having this conversation in the truck, and you were kind of just trying to, I think, verbally process and
Mhm.
explain like what you were feeling.
Mhm.
That like, Keith, I love you, but this campus is feeling like something that I don't really like all the way. I think it's supposed to be something. And I just because we had a relationship,
Yeah.
I wasn't being any certain way, but I just kind of hit you with this question, and you've reminded me of it a million
yeah.
times.
I'll never
But
forget it.
I said, do you think you'll ever be good with going to a church that you're not leading? And you kind of did the braid, and you were like, isn't this
Great
accurate? and it, but I meant that in a very honoring way. But I was like, because I here I am, arguably the closest person to you other than your wife.
Mhm.
If there's anybody carrying the culture, it's like how could it not be me?
Mhm.
I'm trying, and I'm every decision I'm making as the campus pastor, I'm filtering it through
What would Braden
what
do?
would Braden do?
Yeah.
What would Braden do here?
Yeah.
I kind of feel a certain way, and if there was ever any friction, I would usually just lean right to, well, I don't know. I think Braden would want this,
Yeah.
and that was for me was an extremely hard place to be.
Yeah.
Because then I'm starting to notice some differences. I'm starting to pick up on like, I feel like Braden's annoyed. This is I kind of assume this just in general. I just always assume people like me. So I'm like, nah, he likes me.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
something is not right.
Yeah.
And then I know we're having the conversations where you're kind of sprinkling it in there too. You're
Yeah.
like, I don't know what's going on, but I kind of felt like I'm pretty sure Braden's sprinkling this in because he doesn't want to just hit me right across the face with a 2x4 and be like, hey man, I don't think you're gonna be the campus pastor here any longer.
And honestly, I don't know what I was saying. I think,
Yeah.
like you said, I think we're both navigating two things. One, I'm trying to navigate what feels right to me, and at the same time, I think you're starting to discover who you are.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I can think like Braden to a certain degree because that's honoring. When you honor someone, you'll give weight to what they would do. And so you've never stepped out of that honor place. But it's just like that kid at some point when they're like, okay, I so honor and respect my dad. I even love what he's built. And someday somebody's going to love to work for dad. Someone's going to love to take
Yep.
over this business and do it exactly like he would do it to the best of their ability. But if I'm just being honest with you, I don't think I want to work for this company the rest of my life.
Yeah. And it started to become that almost presented itself.
Yeah.
I never had that conscious thought.
Yeah.
I want to do something
subconscious,
different.
sure, yeah.
I want to go and it never was that for me. Honestly, what began to happen is what you said. I was Keithing around. It was like that.
Just
It was
keithing
it was
around.
just like I wasn't doing anything on purpose.
Sure.
I was just leading.
Yeah.
I was leading to number one, the best that I could lead. I was leading to the best I could lead when you weren't around
Yeah.
and you weren't there to make the day-to-day decisions. I was leading the best I could on Sundays. And I was also leaning into who I was,
Mm-hmm.
discovering who I was,
Yeah.
preaching messages that like I do, all the stuff. And I think just in the natural sense, that becomes something.
Mm-hmm.
If I believe this with all my heart, whatever person is over a campus, it will start to look like that
That's
person.
right.
Whatever voice is heard the most, it will start to look like that voice and look like that person. And nobody's doing anything wrong.
Mhm.
Nobody's doing anything outside of honor. It just is what it is. If a campus is going to look like Braden's got to be the campus pastor for the most part.
Right.
The main voice, the leading the charge. And so here I was just kind of being me. And then me and you started getting in a conversation. It's like, it just isn't working. And I'm sitting here going, but I didn't do anything, know? And you're like, no, I know you didn't do anything.
and
In fact, I want you to keep doing what you're doing and who you are. And I had me and my wife had to navigate like, okay. Cause when you hear like, but now my kids are going to that church, and I don't necessarily like what they're going to all the way. Like probably about 90% of it. You have to be in a place to not take offense to that.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And be like, I know he likes me. I know he said that, and I know he didn't mean anything by it. And I actually know, like, we're just trying to get this thing right, and it requires like you living by your conviction, and also you were stewarding me too.
Well, and let me just say this too, because this may help some people. Like my flesh, my immaturity, it often shows up. Most of the time, it shows up in anger.
Yeah, same.
That's what some people start feeling sorry for themselves and pouting. I don't pout, I just get mad.
Yeah.
And so when I'm immature as a leader, when I'm in the flesh and not in the spirit as a leader, when something's not right, instead of just calmly going, hey, maybe we need to make a change, I'd start getting mad. And I catch myself getting mad and nitpicking stuff in my brain. And I usually don't bring that anger at first. It's an internal thing.
Yeah.
And as a leader, I have to work through that. And I have to make sure that I'm not fleshing all over people and my flesh and my anger and my frustration. And oftentimes as a leader, it just is what it is. Your staff is just subject to where you're at in the journey.
Sure.
And so you're, like we said earlier,
braiding all over
I'm
people.
braiding over people and not in the spirit.
You know what helps all of that is relationship.
It does, but it's still worth saying, because at some point it's like, I have to get to the bottom of this thing. And I'm like, oh, why am I mad about this? Why am I frustrated about this? And I had to get to a place where and the Lord could tell me, hey, you do know nobody's done anything wrong, right? They've just done exactly what you've empowered them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts taking me on this journey. And just like with your kid, they've got to be who they're called to be, not who you want them to be.
Yeah.
If you're a real dad, you're not creating cookie cutter robots.
Mm-hmm.
He may grow up and follow in dad's shoes and run the family business. And what's the famous movie, The Proposal? I think about this all the time when I'm thinking about this.
Is it a famous movie?
It's a
famous to you.
It's famous in the Conner family. But it's that one where he goes to New York to be a writer, and his dad's got this business worth so much money in Sitka, Alaska, and it's like there's this tension between the dad and the son, and there's and the relationship is destroyed because a dad doesn't have the understanding of train up a child in the way he should go, and that way he should go may or may not have anything to do with you.
Yeah,
and that's where the difficulty lies sometimes as a parent, when it's like, hey, I have to train. Remember, they were God's kids before they were my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one that put the calling into them. He's the one that put their spiritual DNA in them. My job is to get in tune with him and help raise his kid for him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in the spirit realm, same thing. yeah, I've got staff members, I've got people, but it's like they don't exist to make my dreams come true. In fact, we believe this, in a true apostolic organization, the organization exists to make God's dreams come true in that person, whether it's on staff or off staff,
Yeah.
in the organization, out of the organization, planting a campus, planting their own church.
Mhm.
It's not my job to say everything has to fit inside my quote unquote vision.
Yeah.
It's constantly going before the Lord and saying, Lord, how would I best steward the people that you've brought into my life?
Mhm.
And I think that's where we finally found ourselves, where it's like, wait a minute, regardless of what either one of us wants, what would be easier? What is right? What is
What is
God
right?
saying? And you went on a sabbatical, and I think for a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, Keith's on a sabbatical," and it's like, "Oh, he just needing some rest." It's like, no, Keith needs some vision.
Yeah.
That it really wasn't about rest as much as it was, I need to hear from God, and you did.
I did. I mean, the majority of the sabbatical was getting clarity on what I was supposed to do next and what God was calling us to do. I'll say this: I think God was involved 100% in the friction of
Mm,
all of this that we're talking about.
sure.
I believe that, and I think one of the reasons He could do it that way was because of our relationship.
Mm,
And so that was the hardest part for me in the whole sabbatical, was there was actually more negative emotions than positive.
hmm,
So Amarillo was always on the docket. I knew Amarillo. We had talked. It was one of the 7 cities. I had a lot of tension about going back to Amarillo in the first place.
When I first started sensing it might be Keith and Amarillo, I'd be like, "Hey, Keith,
Just-
Amarillo." It did not go well.
No,
at
you were
first.
just joking around. It's like, oh, I know who's going to Amarillo, and I'm like, don't look over here. I ain't going back there. And it was kind of like Midland for
Yeah,
you.
oh, yeah.
There was points of tension there. I had been there. I had cut my teeth in ministry there. I had, in some ways, I had felt used in ministry in that city, to be quite honest with you. And so I kind of had a lot of negative feelings towards it. And I'm like, I didn't want to go back. So there was all of that. Not to mention there was negative emotions surrounding the transition in Lubbock,
Yeah.
and it felt like there was a lot of man involved.
Mm,
If I could have picked it my way, I would have been leading in Lubbock. Everything was great, and then all of a sudden one night the Lord drops Amarillo into my heart. I see it in my dreams. Cody comes and gives me a prophetic word about it.
a bush starts burning.
A bush starts burning.
The
I
water
go
starts
over
partying.
to it. It's like Amarillo, and I'm
By
like,
morning?
Get in the
no.
bathtub,
Yeah.
the water splits.
Yeah, it's like, and it would have been like all of a sudden there's this deep desire to go to Amarillo. It didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
There was friction here. I no longer fit here in some ways. I knew that you would make a space for me here,
Yeah.
and maybe it was in
And
college,
we had talked about it.
and maybe in college ministry or doing something different. Because we felt we were supposed to be a part of the family. There was always supposed to be this connection. I knew that. You knew that. We all, and I'm like, I just could not get over the fact that like this negative type of friction was pushing me towards God and
Yeah.
what God was saying.
Wow.
That was very, very hard. Because in all of that, everything just started to kind of line up for Amarillo.
Mhm.
It just started to make sense. Oh, I'm kind of feeling my own thing. I'm kind of feeling like I'm supposed to do something. It ain't going to happen here in Lubbock. We already got someone in Midland. I've been in ministry for almost 15 years now. I'm not dumb. I can look on the board. No spot for Keith.
I remember you told me that one day, like, look, I've seen the org chart, the future org chart.
Yeah.
There's not a spot.
There's not a spot. And it's like,
And I was like, no, I'll make one. I'll make one. We're all trying to make
create
it
a whole little
Yeah.
wing over here for Keith. And it's like, we look at Amarillo, it's like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of favor there, family there, whatever you want to say. But I'm such a feeler. All the feelings
Mhm.
were like, "Meh, no, I don't like
Yeah,
this."
sure.
And everything's pointing to that. And I mean, the Lord was just so faithful to send people in both churches with dreams. I mean, there was 2 dreams that even gave you and us the green light for me to go on sabbatical in the
Yeah,
first
for sure.
place.
That's
It
right.
pointed to that. And then there was just things that happened all along the way
Yeah.
that were like, and I'll never forget, me and Natalie were in Tennessee the last week of my sabbatical. It was kind of like a hoorah moment. We knew what was on the table. And quite frankly, Amarillo, when it came to going and planting a church, it just became a decision.
Yeah.
And it was the Lord was pointing to it, but I know for a fact he gave me the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
You can do this if you want, or you cannot.
Yeah.
And I just remember we're in this rental car. I slapped the center console, and I was
Such a Keith moment.
Yeah,
such a Keith
Keith
moment.
moment.
I know. I'm like, I looked at Natalie and I'm like, I've made a decision. And like, I half believed that when I said, I've made a decision.
That's so
Maybe.
funny.
Yeah.
And she's like, you have? We've been talking about it the whole time.
Yeah.
Talking about it for
Months.
9 months.
Yeah.
And she's like, you did? I'm like, yeah, we're planting a church in Amarillo. And when I said it, and I knew on the inside, I knew that when I said it, it was going to become real.
Yeah.
I knew that when I made the decision with my words.
Like the
and
emotions would start following.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was going to become a thing. In fact, before I even said that, I told Natalie, I was like, we're driving. It's a 2-hour drive. I'm like, I just can't say I'm going to go plant a church in Amarillo. She's like, well, you kind of just said it. I'm like,
No,
I didn't. I did not commit to this yet.
If I were to say.
You put that on me.
And so that when I finally reconciled the emotions and everything that led me there, the Lord confirmed it and confirmed it and confirmed it. Amarillo by Morning was a song that
Literally,
I heard.
will you tell like just a couple, maybe 2 or 3, like the crazy confirming things that happened?
Yeah. So after we decided to go, I'm like, we made the decision. I said it. I tell the elders we're talking about it, but I need a couple of butt taps from the Lord, like I just was like, come on, man, like I need some more confirmation. So we're in Amarillo, and we're driving back. We're leaving Amarillo. We're on like Coulter and 45th Street, and I look up and I see this billboard, and our house currently that we're living in Lubbock is on the billboard in Amarillo. And I'm like, Natalie, our house is on the freaking billboard. Like it's right there.
You thought you were being prophetic.
I'm like, our house. And she's looking at the houses. She's like, I don't want to live here. And I'm like, no, up there. Like we're literally like, and it is our house
my
on the
favorite
billboard.
story.
And the billboard says,
Crazy.
your forever neighborhood.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, so we pull over and we take a picture of it. And I'm like, I need this one in the bag. When I'm questioning if we're supposed to do this, I can go back and look at this picture. And as I told the elders, Cody's like, oh my, I remember you were like,
Yeah, I
oh
got
my
chills
gosh,
right
that's
now, all
amazing.
over you.
And what was weird about that is that like, it didn't do it for me. It's about I asked for a sign, the Lord gave me a billboard, and I'm still like,
Yeah.
maybe,
Maybe you should work on that.
I know I should work on that. I'm like, Lord, like I need my feels to come along. And so fast forward, we announced to the church in Lubbock. It's the Sunday where we're announcing that we're going to go plant a church in Amarillo. We leave the next day to go to a conference about church planting. While we're at the conference, we tag on 2 days to celebrate Natalie's 40th birthday, and we're having a great. We show up to dinner. We're in this restaurant. It's an outdoor restaurant. Kind of there's a patio over here, and it wasn't 5 minutes in.
Not in Texas.
Not in Texas. This is in Laguna Beach, California. This is in California. And I make that point because there's a guy out on the patio in a cowboy hat and he's singing country music. And we're sitting there, can barely hear it. And all of a sudden I'm like, no way. I'm like, babe, do you listen to what he's singing? And he is singing Amarillo by Morning on a porch in a beautiful place in Laguna Beach, California.
That's great.
Natalie grabs my phone. She runs out there. She takes a video. And I don't know what it was, but for some reason, that moment, after I had already decided multiple times, after I'd announced to my own church, we're going to plant this church, like that moment sealed the deal for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Lord has just been so faithful, to come alongside. I think there's just something to say there about what happens even on the backside of making a decision by faith that, the scripture talks about signs that follow those who believe.
Yeah,
they
that's right.
follow the belief in a lot of ways.
And the belief was demonstrated with some action, and then the sign followed the action.
Yep.
Mhm.
So some really cool stuff.
Well, and then you
Took a while to get there though.
well, and there's some stuff that happened before. There's some stuff that happened after it, but in the entirety of that season, we're still trying to figure out. Even if you said yes to going and planting a church, what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is he going to plant a campus? Is he going to plant a church? And for a while, I'm trying to steward the vision of and the dream we feel like we have of like 7 cities. So in our brain, it's like there will be 7 Renew Life churches that I oversee, and so on and so forth. But what I think is this journey has done a lot for all of us. To be quite honest with you, is it's forced me to answer really tough questions of like, okay, that's the vision, that's the dream. It's like, well, hang on. Am I adding to some things that God has said based on my intellect?
Yeah.
Or are we actually just doing exactly what he said? And also, is this really what I want? Do I want to be in charge of 7 churches
Yeah.
or however, whatever that means movement? Is that even,
Yeah.
am I even graced to do that? Or was that like we were talking about this before we started recording? Was that the thing the Lord knew he could say to me at the moment that I could wrap my head around and would get me moving?
Moving in
So-
that direction.
And so that I would
Yeah.
eventually get to a place where he could say the next thing, like he did with Abraham. God never wanted Abraham to kill Isaac. It was never part of the plan.
Mhm.
But he told him to kill Isaac
Yeah.
because he needed to get him moving.
Mhm.
And there are things along the way that I think the Lord does where it's like, let's get them moving. It's like we're thinking about Keith. We're thinking about Keith and Amarillo. It's like, okay, great. Once we finally made the decision, great. Keith, we need to start making some business decisions. We need to open up an individual LLC and a 501c3 for Amarillo.
Yep.
Well, what's it going to be? Well, obviously, it must be Renew Life Church Amarillo.
Right.
So you go and get the LLC.
Open up a 501c3.
Open up the 501c3.
Tell them the name.
Tell
Renew
them
Life Church Amarillo.
Renew Life Church Amarillo. And then it's like, stuff starts kind of going, why does this not feel all the way right yet? There's just still something about this that it's like, I don't think we're hitting the bullseye. I think we're on the target.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
moving in the right direction.
But it just does something about it doesn't feel right. And
Mhm.
you start getting, again, it's all this little things. And it's like, I just get this thing of like, I think he's supposed to go to this training. It's called ARC, Association of Related Churches. They don't even do church the way we do church, but I know they have some skill sets that we don't have. And I remember coming to you saying, I think you need to go to this. I think you need to go to this training. And you're like, really? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I think this will be good for you. I think they'll be able to give you things that I can't give you. We can't give you as a church.
They really have the playbook
I got a great
when it
playbook.
comes to church planting.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You go. Little did I know the Lord starts speaking to me about some things that might be going to happen when you get back and some changes to this thing while you're there, having your kind of like, okay, I got to own this vision. Like this has got to mean something to me. When the elevator pitch, if someone's asking me, why are you here? It's got to come from a place. And it's like, all of a sudden it just happens. You start thinking about vision. What's
Yep.
my vision? What do I see? And it's like,
Because I can't fake it.
yeah, you can't fake it.
I can't act like I'm 100% behind another vision or something else that didn't necessarily come from God to me.
Sure.
That is the tension that I started to face. Not that I don't love the vision of Renew Life. I mean, for heaven to come to earth in every area of life, perfect.
But let's just be honest about this. In 2 other seasons of your life at 2 other ministries, that was perfectly fine to follow
Yes.
another man's vision,
Uh-huh.
to do exactly what you were told.
Mhm.
In fact, you've even told me before years ago, you're like, the only reason I'd ever go anywhere and plant a church is if you were doing it with me. I would never, those words, I would never do this. And it's like, but there were seasons of where you had tests that had to be passed. Well, once you pass that faithfulness and obedience test, then the Lord starts moving you to the next one, which is like, okay, you've been faithful with another man's. I'm gonna start putting one in your heart. And then you start for the first time going, I like this. I don't know if I'm supposed to give the rest of my life to this. There's this other thing going on the inside of me.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's impossible for someone to be passionate, fully behind, because here's the reality. There will be Renew Life churches with campus pastors in other cities that are like, I love this. I love being a Renew Life church. I love being a campus. I love getting the instructions. I love executing the playbook. I love putting the plan together as a team. I love it. And now we're learning that maybe even in your case, it's like, maybe there's something else in there. And that's what started happening with you.
It did. I mean, and I'll never forget, we were sitting there in California, and I mean, this is the last night of our trip, and I look at Natalie, and I'm like, I think we may have to have our own name. It may supposed to be a separate name. She's like, really? And this is like down the road of opening a 501c3 as Renew Life Church Amarillo, filming an announcement video that got sent to our whole church in Midland and Lubbock that says, we're going to plant Renew Life Church Amarillo. This is me paying money
Also knowing, I have also said at this point, we can't, it has to be Renew Life Church. For
Yeah.
me to do what the Lord has told us to do, it's got to be Renew Life Church. Because again, I'm trying to steward what the Lord has said to me as well.
Correct. And I'm sitting there and she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I didn't even want to. I didn't want to think of a name. I didn't want to have the pressure of having my own name. But there started to be this tension where it was like, okay, the Lord's put something in me.
Mhm.
I'm seeing that we're supposed to do something very, very similar to what Renew Life is doing, but there are going to be some nuances.
Mhm.
I feel like there's a vision he's placing on the inside of me that I need to put words to. And if it's different, I started to have this conversation. If it's different, I can't plop another vision on top of Renew Life Church Amarillo.
Mhm.
So now I'm kind of pigeonholed and stuck into this idea, this exact mission, this whatever. It's great. I love it. But is it going to work with the conviction that the Lord has given me? Is it going to match up?
Mhm.
And so the name thing was a weird thing for me because it brought out all these other complications. And it's like,
Mhm.
wow, I can see how it could be a different name. So here I come back. Elders have met, talked about what Renew Life is going to do to support us moving forward. And we get in your truck in the parking lot of the
Mhm.
office. And I want people to know, like, this is how this stuff
That's how it
happens.
happens.
And I'm like, you kind of tell me what Renew Life is going to do to support us. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, hey, there's this other thing. I have this feeling that like we may have to have our own name. And I want you to know, like, that I really don't feel like I have a dog in the fight right now. I kind of want it, mostly don't. And you're like, dude, I've been thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's just, yeah. Leanne's kind of said the same thing. We've had some conversations. It's kind of like we're
It was almost
planting
just,
Keith.
well, it was almost a
in that
green light to even just let your heart even go that direction, because that's what honor does. You had so honored the situation where it's like, okay, I'm still in honor here. I want to give weight to anything that they say. So sometimes you kind of hold your heart at bay before, and instead of just turning it loose until it's like, is this a direction? And it was like a divine moment where it was like, hey, like, gloves are off. We just got to do what the Lord says here.
Mhm.
If it's supposed to be another name, you'll know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Oh.
for it.
And on my side, I'm hearing all this and I'm like,
What are
what are we doing?
what do we do?
And that's honestly why we're even filming this
Yeah,
podcast,
that's
right.
because it's like there are people that are probably sitting there thinking like what I was thinking, which is the moment that I got communicated to and it was cleared up, I was like, oh, this makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
And so it's like, but hold on, we said,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm very much like,
We said. Yeah.
and so,
And what's funny is I usually am too.
Yeah.
Like I can be that way as well. But it's like, it's that thing again where it's like, I'm having to play dad of the organization, so to speak. And I've got kids, and I know how many times we told our kids, hey, this is how we're going to do things. And then they do it, and you're like, Dad should have said something different because that's not going to work.
class small.
Yeah, go ahead, Small. But it's like, it was in those moments where it's
Yeah,
like, wait a minute,
it's good.
again, this is not about me. This is not about what I see. Lord, what's the most kingdom? What's the most you thing that we could possibly do? And what I had learned through starting a church of my own, because I also had to go on a similar journey years ago where it's like, I'm serving another man's vision. Now I got to be faithful with what God's saying to me. How do I honor what he's saying to me, but what the Lord's saying to
Yeah.
me? I've been down that. The Lord brings you back to those places. And then it's like, I can't have such faith and conviction about my journey and then not give permission for you to go on the same one,
Right.
or anybody else for that
And I
matter.
think this is such a like an unlocking thing because I as I sit here and I'm like thinking about the landscape of American churches or churches in general, like how many campus pastors are stuck in a position? I say stuck lightly, but maybe it's the wrong term, but are in a position where they're feeling and thinking the things that you're thinking in terms of like what the Lord's calling you to do,
Mhm.
but a leader is so maybe dogmatic in their approach to leadership and it's not family, it's organizationally
Mhm.
driven and not
Yeah.
family driven, that it's actually got a guy who needs to grow in an area that he can't because he's put in a box
Mhm.
and he's afraid to even knock on one of the walls to say, hey, I think the Lord's telling me something different.
Yeah.
And so even as I'm listening to this, it's like there could be so many unlocking things in churches around the world. I'm not saying like, if you go to your senior pastor and say, hey, I have a different name that I want to put on our church building, and they say no, that you start that church
Yeah.
in an unhealthy way. But like, I think that this might start having some people reconsider, like, why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? And can I have some open and honest conversations? Because what I see is happening is I don't know what the success is going to be of the church in Amarillo, but what I do know is Keith is going and is about to become someone in the Lord that he's never been before.
That's right.
And
That's
that's
good.
the beauty of even what we're getting to do. It's
Well,
pretty
and I
incredible.
think
Yeah.
that is where I think I would invite leaders that are maybe in my seat
Yeah.
to say, hey, redefine success, because you can multiply faster and bigger if you're in control of more. If you say, this is what we look like, this is who we are. And I'll just be honest, maybe there are some people out there that's what the Lord's told them to do.
Yeah.
You got to do what the Lord's told you to do. But I'm just going to tell you, for us moving forward, what and I'll say this, these are things that had to happen in my heart. I have to redefine success as, it's not about far and wide. It's about, I'm not measuring my success with how many churches, how fast are they growing, and things like that.
How many people are coming?
It's not, what about, let's measure our success in sons and daughters.
It's really good.
Like, I'm talking about genuine sons and daughters, and think about it how you would with your family. I want, no matter what my daughters choose to do and who they choose to marry after I choose who they're going to marry, but no matter what at the end of the day, what I want is for them to hear God. I want them to have a relationship with him. And I want, between them and their husbands, to be hearing God and make decisions. And I gave this analogy to you guys earlier. I want them to live next door to me. At least I think I do,
Yeah.
we have these things that are maybe the desires, it's that grandparent, parent kind of desire. But I can just tell you right now, I would rather have to have more conversations with my grandkids over FaceTime because they're on the other end of the world, because my daughter at the end of the day grew up into hearing the voice of her heavenly Father more than she even feels and hears the weight of her own earthly father.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, he is her father.
Yes.
I'm her natural father for a season, but at the end of her days, I want her and her husband to come together and say, what is God saying for us to do? We've got people in our lives, spiritual fathers in our lives, that we're honoring and giving weight to what they're saying. And I would rather give up some of my own wishes and desires to see her pursue God. And I think if we'll redefine success as leaders, even as if you're an apostolic type leader that wants to plant and build and do all the things, I think if you'll give yourself permission to redefine success in that, I don't have to have control. Like, we don't even know, just to be really honest with you, as we move forward and plant Amarillo, we don't know where all the things are going to look like. So, we're going to start a whole nother basically organization where it's not just Renew Life Church, but it's the Renew Life Church family of churches. And we're going to redefine, like, hey, what if someone wants to be a part of just a network? What does that mean to be a part of it? Which is what you'll be. You won't be a Renew Life Church, but you'll be a part of the network, be a part of the family, and you're the front runner. Mm-hmm. You're going to help us, because we have so much relationship here. Help us define what are some good things to say, hey, I'm willing to say that's part of my family. Is it our values? Is it our church government? Is it what are the things? And it'll be a moving target. We're gonna get it right some. We're gonna get it wrong some.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, I care more about you doing what you think God's told you to do. I care more about you becoming who God's called you to become, because he doesn't use people to get his stuff done. He uses stuff to get his people done.
Yep.
So like you said earlier, what's going to happen in you, it happened in me. There were certain levels of development that could have never happened in me had I not done this.
Yeah.
There are certain things that could never happen in you and your family, and for Jackson, Stratty, and Kate, they'll never happen for them if you don't do this. Mm-hmm. And it's not about the success of Renew Life Church. This cannot be about that.
Yeah.
The expansion of Renew Life, it's not about that. It's about, what are we supposed to be doing? What is God saying that we're supposed to be doing here? And why don't you tell everybody? I think we've beat around the bush enough.
Yeah,
it's clearly not going to be. It's not going to be Renew Life Church Amarillo. What's it going to be?
Yeah, so it's going to be called The Vine.
Awesome.
Yeah, our church is going to be called The Vine, and I can tell you, when it's funny, just even trying to figure out what our name was going to be and searching that and whatever. I can tell you from my seat that is when everything really came to life for Amarillo and for me and in my heart, is when I was put into a place where I had to figure out, what is the name? Well, to figure out the name, you have to figure out what your vision is.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
And what are you called to do? What's the Lord saying? And so that is kind of how, without going into that, it forced me to get vision. It forced me to put my heart in, and it would have just been a lot easier just to sit back and go, oh, there's already vision, there's already mission. I'll just go do that.
Mm-hmm.
But when the life came to it, it was like he breathed life into this plan. Is when I had to search out the things of God and ask him, Lord, what do you want this to be called and why? And that's telling me a lot of what we're supposed to go do.
Yeah, that's good.
So that was a really beautiful process. And I think for guys like me, or who might be that campus pastor sitting in an organization, or from just being in this seat, I struggled a lot with, is this pride?
Mm,
Am I being prideful for wanting to do my own thing?
mm-hmm.
Are people perceiving this as, oh, look, a little bit of pride, Keith wanting his own thing? Like, those were thoughts that were in
Yeah.
my head, because to have a conversation with a senior leader or someone else and say, hey, I feel like it might need to be a different name, or I feel like I might need to, it's going to be a different vision.
Mm-hmm.
It feels prideful in some ways.
Mhm.
It can come across that way. In fact, we've all been in church for a really, really long time. Most conversations of a second chair or a third chair person wanting to do their own thing is couched in a whole talk about they're prideful.
Mm-hmm.
They just
That's
couldn't
true.
submit. They just couldn't whatever. And it's like, yeah, but what happens when someone did do the right thing? They were faithful with the 2 or 5 talents they were given.
That's right.
The Lord's trying to give them more. They're trying to say yes to it
That's right.
and honor all at the same time. It's just a hard place to be. And it's
Yeah.
like, you want to throw up the disclaimer. This is not pride.
Mm,
This is actually like hard for me to say this. There's a lot of me that doesn't want to do this.
yeah.
I'm choosing way harder.
Yeah.
I'm choosing way harder, right? Because truth be told, we would have been down for me to go plant a campus. I could have gone and planted a campus, could have been Renewal Life Church Amarillo, would have had the backing of y'all, would have been you driving up to Amarillo with me and looking at buildings with me and saying this, and it's like, but it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It wasn't what not just I made the decision, what we all made the decision
Yeah.
to do. And so working through that pride aspect and realizing like, no, it's actually okay, man.
Mhm.
I talked to a lot of spiritual fathers in my life, leaders and brothers in my life. And I'm like, am I being
Yeah.
some kind of way?
Yeah.
And-
And nobody's saying anything other than go for it. Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
No, dude, this is just what
Yes,
happens.
yes,
This is
sure.
it. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, and I think that's really the heart of what I think we can I want to kind of start bringing this to a close, because really at the end of the day, what we wanted people to understand is, as an organization, we are constantly and regularly trying to say, Lord, what's the most kingdom way to do this? What is the closest to your perfect plan for us to do this? And scripturally, but also just for us. And it's like, as we've done this, we've started to see like, hang on, we have to create space for other types of churches, like Renew Life Church, family of churches that are autonomous. You're the senior leader.
yeah.
I don't have governmental authority in that church. Renew Life Church has no governmental authority in that church, but we're going to help you.
Yeah.
We're
You're going to be
make,
an overseer.
I'll be an overseer,
Yep.
but it's relational authority.
Yeah.
It's honor, not obedience. It's relational authority, even at that, because I have the same thing in my life. But then as a church family, we're going to help. We're still going to give money. We're going to send you with money. We're going to take care of your salary for a couple of years. There's
Yep.
things we're going to do. Why? Because I think it says something to someone when it's like, hey, I'll get behind you as long as you look like us.
Hmm.
But what if you just want to get behind them as a person?
Mm-hmm.
What if there's no agenda? What if there's strings attached? Would you still get behind that person?
And that's where the family language comes in.
That's when the family
That's when
language
it starts
comes in.
making a lot of sense. It's like, I know you guys love me.
Yeah.
I know like everybody in our elders in both churches, like they want to see my family go up there and freaking crush it.
Yeah.
And do what the Lord has called us to do. And so, yeah, that from hearing that means a lot,
Mhm.
because I never wanted to go off and disconnect.
Yeah.
I never wanted to go off and like not be a part of the family
Yeah.
anymore. How can we have both?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
Well, and again, you're the front runner of this thing, because now it's opened up the door that, so if you're a part of the Renew Life Church family, you're watching this, and it's like, just know we're going to keep planting churches. Some are going to be campuses. Right now, the plan is Odessa will be a campus, Renew Life Church, Odessa. When we go to Ireland, It's going to start off with campus governments. We think there's probably something else in the future. I don't think I can get to Ireland as often as I need to if it was going to be that level, but it's going to start off with kind of campus style governance. But what we're wanting you to understand is there is room. There's room in our organization for sons and daughters to dream, to hear God, for churches to say, hey, I got this thing in my heart. I want to be a part of the family. Great. We've got a place where the Renew Life family of churches, there's connection there, there's relationship there, there's
Yeah.
support there, but there's room for you to be you. There's also maybe times where we plan a campus and all of a sudden a leader grows into a place where it's like, hey, I think I can run this. There's elders now in my church that I don't need the overseeing elders to what if we had our own elders at this campus? There's got to be room for the organization to continue to grow, evolve, develop, just like in your family. You want kids first, then you eventually want grandkids and great grandkids, and you want all of them pursuing God's plan for their life, hearing God. Some might draw them closer to home, some might be further away from home, but it's still family. We're still probably going to hang around at Christmas.
Yep.
Sometimes, depending on how far off you go, you might have to do Christmas on FaceTime. So you'll melt. It's just all these nuances of family. Family's not clean. Family's not boxes and lines. Family's an organism. It's moving. And I think that's what we're really saying is that, Renew Life Church is a family.
Yep.
The whole organization is built on family model, family values. And so if you hear, as you start to hear of planting of churches and things like that, and you hear somebody say, oh, did you hear about the vine? It's like, what is that? That's all. Now you can at least say, here, let me tell you a little bit about what that means.
Yeah.
And there's language to that. And, we wanted our church family to hear this. We want you to have clarity around some of the things that we're doing. Obviously, Keith and Natalie going to plant the vine. We've got some other stuff coming down the pipe. We're going to continue as a leadership team to do everything we can to, as we're moving forward in faith, to adding wisdom to how we do this. We want you to be a part of it. We want you to be behind it. I'm sure we'll be getting some feedback on this from our folks. But then also, if you're a leader out there, if you're a church leader, you somehow stumbled upon this, I just, not like it's weird because I feel like I don't even have permission to say this, but it's like, I want to give you permission to be you, to lead without having to control every single thing. And I'm inviting you into a leadership style of trust and humility where you don't have to be everything. There's too many church organizations out there that are built on a person. And we should know this by now, but the only person the church is supposed to be built on is Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus displayed his ministry through the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And then he manifested more of himself through the gifts of the Spirit, through the redemptive gifts in Romans 12, and the manifestational gifts of the Holy Spirit in 1 Corinthians 12. It's like there's this beautiful mixture between fivefold and redemptive and manifestational. And there's got to be room for different expressions, different looks. And I would just challenge you to start measuring your success in sons and daughters, not campuses and offerings and numbers. Really measuring yourself with family language, with sons and daughters. How many people look back and they don't just obey me because they have to, because they're on my staff. They honor me because I became a true mother and a father to them, and they know I'm for them no matter what they choose. And I think that's what we're going after. That's what I want to be as the senior leader of the organization right now. But I know you guys will grow into the exact same thing. You'll model that in the Vine.
Absolutely.
You'll model that in Midland as you continue to lead this campus so well as you have for so long now. This is who we are. This is who we are. We're going to continue to be this. We're going to keep changing. We're going to keep growing.
Yeah.
I would like to say we know what we're doing, but we just know who we're following.
There you go.
And as we get better at following him, we hope that the changes are not as so drastic maybe at times, but for now, this is kind of where we're at. And we just wanted you to hear from us, get a bit of a behind the scenes look at what's been going on over the last several years, and just get your faith connected to what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Cody, any last words?
No, I mean, I would just say, just pray.
Yeah.
Really, like, I think that the Lord's calling us to great things, obviously, but some of that's going to be built on, there are things that are happening in the future that are being built on today's prayers. And so as a member of the church, just pray that there's wisdom, that there's faith, that there's provision, that that even some of the things that are so wild in the spirit that have been spoken about this organization that they actually come to pass. But we just agree with you as you pray and just expecting.
Yeah.
I think that that's where I'm at. I'm like, my heart is so bubbling with expectation for what exactly. I'm not sure, but I
Yeah.
know it's going to be better and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that what we've experienced has been bad.
That's right.
And so I would just invite you on the journey of just trusting and having faith in prayer,
It's good.
really.
Good.
So
Well, if you've lasted this long, it's been about an hour and
Well
15 or
done.
20
Yeah.
minutes.
Faithful
Yeah,
listener.
good. Faithful listeners.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining in. I'd say till next time. I don't know if there will be a next time, but just again,
This
thanks
was
for
fun, though.
it was fun.
Yeah,
I
I enjoyed
enjoyed it.
this.
I could see us doing it again, but thanks for tuning in and getting really just allowing us to share with you our heart, some more of the vision with Real Life Church, and we just believe that it's going to help you partner with us in a deeper and more meaningful way. So thanks for
Yeah.
being with us today.
yeah.
Yeah.